Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.Biz, and this is the Innova.Buzz podcast where we explore the dynamic intersection of innovation and now artificial intelligence and the art of nurturing human relationships in this rapidly changing world. Today, I'm really delighted to welcome back to the show Anna Addoms. Anna is the founder of Wicked Marvelous. She's a champion for making technology accessible and human centered for small business owners. She's known for her practical wisdom on reducing overwhelm, building authentic connections, and helping entrepreneurs focus on what they truly want and really matters. Anna, it's wonderful to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, your last visit, and we were just talking about this before we started recording, your last visit was way back in early 2021, before, in fact, we were saying before the recording software I'm using now was actually launched, or it was, I think it might have been in beta testing then. And that was episode 388. It was certainly before ChatGPT and those kind of tools were on the scene, at least that we were aware of. And we explored building the right team and finding your genius zone. So much has changed since then, obviously, both in the world and right here on the podcast. So we're diving deeper more now into technology and particularly AI and how that can enhance rather than replace those vital human connections. So, with all that in mind and with all the rapid changes in technology and AI, what impact do these tools have on the way we connect, and how do you want that to reflect your values?
You know, it's so funny that you say this. So much has changed, like in the last 5 years, in the last 18 months, even. Um, AI is here to stay. The reality is, like, for a long time when it first launched, everybody was excited. It was this cool, shiny object. But it was also, nobody had a practical idea of what we were going to use it for. It did wacky things and it created fun stuff. And it felt like you were breaking barriers because it was, let's be honest, the Wild West of technology at this, and it functionally still is. But now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. Now we're talking about, like, how do you use it? How do you use it safely? What is it actually doing? Is it actually adding value? Is it still a shiny object rabbit hole where you're not doing anything meaningful with it? Um, my biggest thing is AI is a tool. It's a multi-tool. It can do lots of different things, but it's still just a tool. So you have to treat it like that. It's not gonna replace people. I mean, in some ways it can replace people, but it shouldn't. Um, it's built to help you. I want, like, my biggest goal when I talk to people about how to use it is, how do you use it in a way that provides value, adds value, makes your life easier, but also still lets you do the things that you do best. It still lets you cultivate human connection. You should never use AI to replace anything that cultivates human connection either, because that's just asking for trouble, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you emphasize it is a tool. And as you were saying that, I kind of thought of what are the tools in my shed that I could use as a metaphor. And I thought, oh, I've got a chainsaw in my shed, and a chainsaw. If you're not, if you don't know how to use it, and you're not super careful how you use it, the chainsaw is extremely dangerous. And I know my brother-in-law, for instance, went into one of the big box hardware stores here to buy a chainsaw, and the guy, to his great credit, the sales guy said to him, "Have you ever owned a chainsaw before? Did you grow up on a farm?" And he asked him a bunch of questions, to which my brother-in-law answered no to all of them. And then the guy said, "Then don't buy a chainsaw." And I thought that was actually really good advice. And I thought, well, that's a tool. Now, the benefits, of course, of a chainsaw, if you've got big tree trunks or big branches to chop into small bits, well, it can make that job super easy compared to doing it by hand. And in
Yeah,
some
it could
in
also
some ways,
have the
AI
wrong.
is like that, isn't it?
It is. I think AI is one of those things that, when you understand how to apply it to a situation, it's an incredible tool for taking over, let's say 50 to 80% of the heavy lifting of something that you need to
Mm.
do. And it depends on what your goal is or what you're trying to accomplish. But if you're not sure how to use it, it's going to create more mess, or it's going to create more complexity. The other thing that I notice is that without having a conversation about how to use it and having like a clear end point in mind for what you're trying to accomplish, AI has been touted as the answer to everything, that AI can do everything.
Mm.
AI can be this and this and this and do anything that you can possibly imagine. Except that, like, there are a lot of things you really don't need AI for. Like, I have a number of people right now who are like, "Tell me how to do this with AI." And I'm like, "It's gonna take you longer to get the AI to do this than if you just went into a spreadsheet and did it.
Mm.
Like, just use the spreadsheet. Stop trying to find the workaround for something that doesn't need the workaround." Like, there are lots of things that we wanna have workarounds for, that we wanna have shortcuts for, that AI helps us accomplish. But don't overcomplicate it. Don't add AI to the equation if it doesn't need to be there either.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, the spreadsheet example is an interesting one because I'm actually using it a lot in some of the spreadsheet work I do because I'm I've never I mean I'm a tech person and I love tech, but I've never really come to terms with the complex formulas that you can use in a spreadsheet to basically calculate things based on conditional
Oh,
parameters. So
I
I can do,
100%.
yeah, cell A
I
by cell B, but if cell A is empty and cell B is negative, what do you get? What do you do? And you do something different when it's different and so on. Uh, AI is fantastic for that because I say, here's what I want to do. Give me the formula. And
Yes. That I absolutely think AI is worth using. But when you come to me and say, "I wanna organize data, I wanna feed all of this data into the AI," that's things like contact information. The AI doesn't know what you're trying to organize or doesn't understand the logic, and you have context for every one of those contact lists that are essentially being put in a spreadsheet in order to be imported into something like an email system. So you're adding AI to something that is innately a simple task that's just time consuming. Like
mm,
this is not every small, low level task can be farmed out either. Like
mm,
as much as I love to tell you that like we can farm out all the stuff that nobody really wants to do, some of it you will have to do because you're the only one that has the knowledge
yeah, yeah.
to output it.
Yeah, it's important what you said there, the context and assumptions that we make that aren't documented anywhere, but that are stored up here in our brain, and we we factor that into whatever decision we make around that, particularly when it comes to relationships. So you've you've always championed tech that serves people, and I love that because that's something that I always emphasize. Yeah, I mean, I get distracted by shiny new toys, and I like to play with them a lot. And in fact, I started playing with one this morning, and then I thought, does this add value to what I'm doing? No, stop. So
I get that.
the question of serving people, but also in the sense of using AI. Talk to us a little bit more about how we can keep front of mind that this should be helping us deepen our relationships with people or helping us build new relationships more effectively and quicker.
So, one of the things that I find really helpful is that AI can do a lot. And as we just discussed, context is really important. So, in a lot of cases, the more context you can provide in a situation where you're using AI, better and faster you're going to get the output that you need. But there are lots of different ways you can use AI. You can use AI to create interactivity. Like a lot of people are really excited about creating AI chatbots to help address frontline
Mm.
customer service. That sounds really phenomenal in theory, right? Like it sounds like cool. I don't have to be like keeping an eye on people on my website who are actively like jumping into that like chat bubble in the corner. The AI is going to handle it and only escalate what I need to pay attention to. The problem with that is if you don't have an AI that's really, 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 really well trained on your content and that doesn't, they call it hallucinating. I call it lying because it's really lying. Um, it's, you end up with people getting into a recursive loop where they feel like they cannot get out
Mm.
and they're talking to a bot. And then they get frustrated, and then they have a bad brain experience, and then they don't ever wanna talk to you again, and
Yeah.
they go away. And they go away mad. They don't just go away like, "This wasn't good." They go away pissed off because they couldn't get away from it.
Mm.
Well, one of the things I say to people all the time, especially as I've been spending a lot of time with bigger companies who are like, we're outsourcing our AI, like our after hours call center into an AI system, not even to like an offshore call center. I'm like, no, please don't do this. And they're like, why? It's going to save us so much money. And I'm like, on the front end, it's going to, but
Mm.
on the back end, you are going to lose so much business because you're burning relationships. You are not going to have, there has to be an escalation process where at any point in any conversation, somebody can say, I want to talk to a real human
Yeah.
right now. And if you don't have that built in, you are guaranteed to burn those bridges. And those people who are mad leave bad reviews. People who are happy don't leave
Yes,
reviews.
that's
So
right.
like,
So you skew things. Mm.
right, do not piss people off when you don't have when there is no reason to do it.
Mm. Yeah, that's wonderful advice. And one of my pet peeves, and I'm the sort of person that will only go on those chat box when I've exhausted my own capabilities. So I would have
Mhm.
already, so let's say it's an issue, or I'm trying to find some information, or I'm trying to solve a problem with, say, a software or a software service. I will have attempted to solve the problem myself first. That's just the way how I operate. So I will try and solve the problem myself. My It's not my first resort to go and ask for help. That's my last resort. So when I go and ask for help on one of those chatbots, knowing full well it's probably a chatbot when I click that, speak to someone or whatever they call it, um, I um, all the standard responses from the chatbot are not going to be helpful to me, because it'll tell
Mhm.
me things like, have you tried to reboot your system, or have you tried this, or have you tried that? Yeah, of course I've tried that. Yeah. And
Right.
And if there's not that, as you say, speak to a human button, I'm quite happy if there's a chatbot there. I understand the reasoning for that. But if there's a speak to a person button next to it, I say, that's great, because I'll go
Mhm.
straight there because that's what I want. But 99% of them don't have that. In fact, once you get into that endless loop where it comes back and it says, well, have you tried this? Which was the first suggestion it gave you when you went in through answering a few more questions. And there's still no way of, like, I've even asked the bot, how can I talk to a real person? And it doesn't know the answer to that. It actually will not give you or can't give you an answer to that because it doesn't have that information. I think that this is just awful.
Yeah, and that's fundamentally like the problem we're also running into now is that people aren't saying we've a lot of these bots, a lot of these customer support like chats have, human names with human photos. And so it very much looks like you're talking to a person. So you also need to disclose that
Mm.
that they are speaking to a bot because it will do things that are not human like. It will create a recursive loop every once in a while, even if it is really well trained. It always needs to have a way for you to say, I want to talk to an agent. I want to put a support ticket in if there isn't a live agent
Mm.
function. Um, but also maybe don't name your chatbots don't make them look
Yeah,
human
yeah.
either. That's also like we're getting into an era of voice AI for customer service where they do things like answer the phone and like handle after hours phone calls and things like that. And AI voice technology is getting better, but there is still a very uncanny valley experience where you are like, I am really certain that something is wrong. Like
Mm.
something is off. I can't totally figure out what it is. And I'm very much feeling like I think I'm talking to a human, but maybe not.
Mm.
And that is not a good feeling to have when you are listening to something because it creates this very bad cognitive dissonance for people. And now we're getting to a point where they sound significantly more human-like, and you can voice clone somebody. Like, I could clone your voice here, and probably from all your podcasts, and have an AI that sounds almost identical to you in the way you speak, your cadence, your accent, your word choice. But even with tools like that, they still are just a little bit off. Like, they
Mm.
will never be perfect.
Yeah, that's a bit scary, and we'll come back to some of the ethical considerations and the guide rails we can put into place to prevent that. Because when you said that you could clone my voice from the podcast, oh God, that's that would be scary. Because that could
Not wing.
that can well, yeah, obviously, but that has the potential for doing a lot of brand damage to that person,
Yes.
whoever that might be. If somebody was malicious, they could even make it terrible. Um, let's talk some more though about the empathy side of it and that connection with the client. I mean, if the chatbot is one example, and as I say, where I experience, and I've seen some funny ones where people have actually put a robot picture there and
Hmm.
given the robot a human name, but some sort of weird name that's has a bit of tongue in cheek aspect to it, and so you get a little bit sense of the personality of them there, and also they're telling without saying it, they're telling you this is a chatbot, this is a robot, right? Um, and
Oh,
and then
I always set a I always set an Android robot
yeah,
photo if I built one.
yeah, and then they have the other option, which is either raise a support ticket or maybe even both, speak to a representative, speak to a human um, option straight away up front, so that throughout the whole process, even if you do engage in the conversation with the chatbot, at any point you can do one of those other two things as well. But um, talk to us a little bit more about how you see best practices in this whole regard of where do you use AI, where do you bring that human empathy connection part?
So, in my business and in what I advise my clients and my audience, and especially because I spend a lot of time teaching you how to practically implement AI these days, the thing that I say is use AI for back office. So anything that you guys do internally, anything that's around things like crafting messaging, like anything that goes into print, anything that's not necessarily like things that are not interactive. So I use it to help me craft long form content. I have trained an AI to sound exactly like me in the way that I output and write content. So emails, sales pages, blog posts, things like that. And I use it because now I would say 98% of the content it output sounds exactly like me. It sounds exactly like I would write it because I trained it on things that I had already done.
Mm.
So it's seen the way like it's been given transcripts of my podcast interviews. It's been given emails I've written. It's been given blog post content and sales pages. And so it knows it has replicated me well enough that I can do that, and then I'm just editing. Like, that is a great tool because functionally, I'm still the last person to see it.
Mm.
I'm still make sure that it's right. I'm still gonna fact check it if it writes something, that needs to be fact checked. And when it goes out, it's still coming out with my seal of approval on it. If I'm, remixing a blog post into social media posts, for instance, it's starting with my content and outputting my content in different viral format chunks. Like, it's not extrapolating in a big way. So I trust that like it's staying within it's operating
Mm.
within its boundaries. Um or within its parameters, because boundaries is kind of a loose term in AI right now. But what I do really draw a hard line on is things that are client interaction focused. That is something that we don't ever use. Like, AI is never something that touches a human interaction or a client facing interaction standpoint. The client needs something, they're always talking to somebody on my team, they're talking to me. Um, they're emailing me. There is not an AI that's responding to things. There is an AI that is monitoring and like filtering my
Mm.
inbox so that like you show up at the top of my list and not all the newsletters.
Yeah.
But I'm not an AI is never, like, crafting email responses, it's not scheduling things, although AI scheduling tools are also surprisingly helpful. I'm also just anal retentive enough to want to be in charge of my time and my
Yeah,
calendar, and
yeah.
I don't even let team schedule meetings for me anymore because 'cause I'm like, "No, my time, my rules, nobody else."
Mm. Yeah, I hear you on the calendar thing. Just think back to the very early days of um, when I was in the corporate world, and we had email for the first time, and that came with the calendar scheduling, and all of a sudden, and I was one of the very first adopters of the online calendar because this is great. I can sort of do away with the paper diary, and it's real easy to schedule things way in advance, and also make sure I'm not double booking myself. The danger, though, initially was all of a sudden I had all these meetings that other people booked for me, and without asking me, which in some ways is the AI thing today. It's the equivalent back in
Right.
those days, and I very quickly learned that I my way of dealing with that was, because we weren't allowed to change the way it was set up. That was kind of corporate wide set by the IT department. So what I did, I just set appointments with myself in the calendar, and then people would start to complain about me and say, "You're a really hard person to get a hold of. You're always booked out. You must be very popular." I say, "No, I block out my calendar so I can do some work. Other people can't fill it up."
Right.
Which, yeah. So today I'm like you. I have tried some of those AI tools for appointment setting, but I'm still like, I've got systems where I give people links to book
Mhm.
an appointment, but that's a human interaction.
Yeah, that is my limit to giving people access to
Yeah.
my calendar, and I the number of people that I have the number of entrepreneurs, the number of business owners, even in corporate environments where I'm like, "We need to have a conversation about who owns your calendar," because to a certain point, when you worked in corporate, you don't have as much control because
Hmm.
your IT department says, or you have things that you can't skip, like department
Yeah.
meetings and company meetings. But when you're an entrepreneur, you own your time. And if you don't maintain the boundaries around your calendar and your time, you give up control. And suddenly you have days that look like your brain is going to explode because you have so many things that overlap and so many back to back meetings, and there's no breathing space. And so even in calendars that don't use AI, I'm like, please set blocks where you're like, I only do these kinds of meetings on these 2 days of the week and these like 3-hour windows. Stop giving people access to your schedule 24/7, 7 days a week, please. Like that's just that's just setting yourself up to burn out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a real danger with some of those AI tools, at least the ones I've seen. I thought, yeah, it looks neat, but it's abdicating ownership of my calendar. And
And I feel even stronger about that when it comes to AI. There are a number of new tools out there that are designed to help you, like, get to inbox 0 and that are gonna, like, help you, reply to, like, all of the, like, low-level stuff in your inbox that, like, acts as a virtual assistant, and I'm like, "Oh, hell no, I do not." Like, that scares me because I'm like, I wanna see every one of those. I don't wanna risk that something gets written
mm,
that's not on and that doesn't sound right or hits the wrong tone goes out. Like, I don't ever wanna risk that something like that comes out of an inbox from my business or from my inbox at all. And so, I like having access to AI in my inbox strategically, but I don't ever want it to do anything for me automatically.
mm,
Like, I've had a few emails where I had to fire a vendor last year because they weren't delivering, and I was super frustrated. Like, we'd hit a wall, and I was at my limit. And I wrote the email, and I wrote it while I was mad, and I knew I wasn't gonna send
yeah.
it, like, I wasn't like, because I know better, but I wrote it pissed off and venting instead of handling it like a grown-up and a professional relationship where I didn't wanna burn the bridge. So I wrote it, I left it alone, 24 hours later, I went back to it, looked at it again, tweaked it, and then said, "You know what? I'm gonna go
Yeah.
in and take everything I wrote and drop it in the AI and ask it to reframe it with a more professional tone, with an emphasis on not burning the relationship bridge." And then I had it rewrite it for me, and then I tweaked it again, and then I sent it, and I didn't burn the bridge. I didn't send it while I was pissed.
Yeah.
I didn't accidentally leave anything in there that would have, caused any issues.
Mm.
And that was where AI in that capacity was really helpful. But also, like, if it had drafted that email for me and sent it without me, like, looking at it, I would have been really frustrated.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a great example, and I've actually done that as well. I've actually written an email where I was annoyed at something, and wrote it, and I thought, well, I can't send that. How can I express this? And I was kind of like, how ca- I was asking myself, how can I express my frustrations and my anger, as it was,
Mhm.
over this without burning bridges, sounding professional, um, not sort of throwing a tantrum. And I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to put this text what I've written into ChatGPT and ask the question, that was in my mind, ask the question. And it came back with a reframed version of the text. And I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that's really professional. And I said, but I don't think it's strong enough. I don't think it's has a strong message. So I went back and I said, I want the message to be stronger than that, but without taking away from the professionalism, the elegance. I told it to be elegant about it too. And then it came back with something that I was kind of 90% happy with. And then I tweaked it a little bit and sent that off. And it was like you, it was a similar experience. The response was pretty much that, the person came back very apologetic and um, offered to have a conversation around how we can fix up the issue that I'd raised. But that conversation probably wouldn't have happened in response to the initial email.
Right. And, you know, I'm a big fan of using AI to help you take something you've written and expand on it or help you edit it or reframe it in a different tone. I think that fundamentally using AI to repurpose or restructure something that you have already created is the best use of it because you're not asking it to create something from
Mm,
scratch or to from its knowledge base, which comes with its own ethical and security and proprietary information complications if you own your business or work for a company
mm.
and
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I agree with you. I think that's where it's incredibly powerful and can be incredibly helpful when you give it it's your information and you say, like that email example, please reframe this. I'm angry, I'm frustrated. Here's I'm just venting here, but I want to make this particular point and please do it. Please reframe this in a more professional way. That's one example. The other one that I'm using a lot, and I was showing this to my wife yesterday on a walk. So it's actually on the phone as well, this app. It's a voice recorder where you can speak into it, record what you're saying, and it will transcribe what you've said. And it will then turn that transcription into a coherent presentation. And there's a whole range of templates you can call up. So you can say, give me a bullet point summary of what I've said, or write a social media post about what I've said, or things like that. Where I use it is, which is really great, is if I've got a heap of thoughts swirling around in my head, I'll just record those random thoughts, complete brain dump. They make absolutely no sense. Somebody else reading it would say, this is the thoughts of a madman, it's just wild ramblings. And I can call up some of those templates. And like if I ask it to write a LinkedIn post on this wild rambling, wow, that's really good. I would never post that to LinkedIn or
right.
in public, but it actually helps me. So what we did yesterday, we've got a Japan trip coming up soon, and I used that as an example to demonstrate it. I said, we had a conversation between us that I recorded, and I said, I said to my wife, tell me what you're looking forward to most in Japan. And she mentioned some things. And then I said, well, yeah, and I'm also looking forward. And I mentioned some things. And then we talked about some other stuff. And then I said, okay, now write this up. And it was a really well structured thing. Here's some of the highlights and what you should be looking at for in Japan, or what you're looking forward to in Japan.
That's great.
Mm.
I so I use something similar. I have an app that's actually running right now while we're doing this, um, that runs in the background, and the reason I actually got it, it's an AI tool that basically it transcribes every session, every meeting, every video call that I do. And I didn't get this app specifically for that because 'cause we've all been playing with, different meeting assistants that
Mm.
come to meetings and things like that. I got this because it has the best background noise cancellation features
All
that
right.
just runs on my them. So, like, I could be sitting here right now and there could be, like, major construction next door and you wouldn't even know. Like, it would be perfect studio quality sound.
Wow.
It's That's honestly why I got it. But then I realized it was running in the background and recording my meetings while my meeting assistant that I'd had at the time was attending my Zoom meetings. And I did a head to head, like, side by side of, like, the transcript and, like, the output beyond that. And this does a more accurate transcript with better call quality because of the noise
Mm.
canceling. And it's actually been doing a much better job of giving me summarized notes and, like, detailed action items and, like, it breaks the whole meeting down, and what I found is that it's incredible when I'm doing things like discovery calls because 'cause I'm still it allows me to be fully
Mm,
present in anything that I with clients, in meetings, in sales discovery, in any kind of interaction I'm doing with somebody on a video call or even just audio. But if I can be here talking to you, paying attention. I don't have to think about taking notes
Mm,
because it's
yeah.
actually taking all of really good notes. It's also making my to-do list at the end. But what it does is allows me to do like have all of this information. So if I do a sales call, at the end of that meeting, I get a audio clip, like a full audio recording like file. I get a transcript and then I get its summarized breakdown of everything in the meeting. And it breaks down uh, all the speakers. So all of that is really helpful. And what I've done with my sales call framework is I have an AI that I trained and created a prompt framework for that writes my proposals now because I have a very standard
mm,
proposal format. Every proposal has 9 steps and I give it a certain set of like I give it all the detailed information, that summarized call, I give it the transcript, I tell it who it's for and what the price point is that the project is coming under, and I ask it to write the first draft of my business proposal to a prospect or to a potential client. And I can now turn a proposal around in 30 minutes
Yeah.
instead of in a few
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah. That's,
And fully
mhm.
present for the entire
yeah, a couple of really valuable um, applications there. And I think you sort of prompted, I'm trying to think where do I have templates that I use? And it take me a couple of hours to kind of fill in all the relevant information. And that seems to me like that's an obvious AI application to build the AI around the template and get it to draw on the information that's in documents you already have.
Yep. I'm a huge believer in AI is great is the most applicable tool to help you write SOPs.
Mm,
Like the thing that no one wants to do. The number one thing you need when you start hiring people, first thing everybody does when they hire an assistant is like, I need an assistant. I have too much stuff on my plate. You hire somebody and then everybody comes to me and says, well, they're not doing what I want
Yeah,
them to
yeah.
do, or it's not what I want. And taking 3 times as long and I still have to do the work. And I'm like, did you give them the process and the guidelines? And they're like, no. I'm like, let me give you a prompt that's going to take you through this step by step and help you write this, and then you can
Mm,
edit it. Or give it enough information, then have it write the whole thing so that it's super clear and it breaks everything down in, like, every step. And then once they have those, everything starts coming back
yeah,
faster and exactly the way they want, and it looks good.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's an important message there about SOPs, and yeah, I have used actually. Well, I've got probably all the SOPs I need for the business, but what I have done is fed in an SOP that we've got into ChatGPT and said, "Give me some critique on this. How can this be improved?" And then it
Yes.
sort of comes back. A lot of the stuff it comes back with are kind of like you go, "Duh, that should be in there," but you never would have thought about it.
Right, because your brain is like, "That's I already
Yeah,
accounted for
yeah, yeah.
that, like, I don't have to everybody
Mm,
should know this." The thing that we all forget is that our, like, pool of common knowledge, especially around things that are proprietary in our businesses, or just in the way that we think
mm,
about process, is different. The way I think about how something works is still different enough from you that there are small
mm.
pieces that you think matter that are really linchpins into making something go the way it's
Yeah,
supposed to.
yeah, yeah, exactly right. All right. Well, let's talk about the guide rails or the safe space type thing. Coming back to what you mentioned earlier about somebody having the ability to go online to anybody that creates a lot of content, particularly if it's either video or audio content, and actually clone their voice and then go out and um, either um, spam people, let's call it that, spam people with what appears to be coming from Anna. but it's actually not. It's going to somebody else and siphoning off money somewhere, or actually putting out rubbish content or buzz that will hurt the brand. What are some of the things, first of all, that each of us could do to protect ourselves, and also that we can do to recognize that sort of stuff, like a inbuilt spam filter, if you like?
One of the biggest things that I recommend for monitoring is making sure that you have things like Google Alerts set up for your name, your business, like keeping track of that, because there are things that get published that you get tagged in, or that you get like, or someone posts as you, and you're like, wait a minute, that's
Mm.
not me. And that's the first level of like true defense, just like keeping an eye on your presence on the internet. That's like it's also, and it sounds really old school, but it's functionally, it still works. Like I got a Google alert this morning for something, and I'm like, I don't nothing is supposed to be going live. I haven't been like, there's no new media. I shouldn't be getting tagged in something. I was like, I have an interview this afternoon, but Jurgen wouldn't be
Mm.
like, I wouldn't be getting tagged in that yet. And it turns out that I did a podcast interview that went live 2 weeks earlier than it was supposed
Okay,
to,
yeah.
and I got a
Mm.
Google alert, and I was like, "Oh, cool. I'm glad I know that. I'm glad it wasn't something screwy." Um, but again, it gave me a heads up on something that wasn't supposed to happen today, so I was prepared. Um, Secondarily, like, there are some things that we don't have control over. If you're putting your content on platforms like YouTube, even if you put in the ability, like, prevent the ability for somebody to download a video or an audio file, or to, um you can't, like, prevent things like screen recording on platforms like
Mm.
YouTube and Vimeo, because they're public source, like, they're public face um, platforms. So, the reality is there's gonna be some risk to this for all of us in the long run. Like, there's not to a certain extent, there's not a lot of ways to stop it yet. This is part of the AI is the Wild West, and
Mm.
we're still trying to keep up with it and understand what should and shouldn't be regulated. Um, the biggest ways that I'm seeing voice cloning happen is not in people like you and me,
Mm.
and nobody's in the malicious thing this way. It's people cloning, famous
Yeah.
actors or famous people and doing things maliciously. Like someone voice cloned Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and then hacked the traffic lights and the crosswalks in San Francisco and Seattle, and started having, every time you press the button, they spouted some like crazy messed up message that sounded like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, and like whining about taxes. You know, they were making a political statement, but they used
Yeah.
AI voice
No.
cloning technology, which both of these platforms are big
Mm.
advocates. Like both of these people are big advocates for. So it was also a little
Yeah.
ironic. Um, we're seeing it there. Like I've seen somebody in the vein of like, this is a bigger issue with like what I just talked about with someone who was alive, who has, the ability to go say like,
Mm.
hey, this is both against the law and all of these other things. Someone recently cloned Alan Rickman's voice from his character as Professor Snape in Harry Potter, and then created a series of voice, like short story content that he narrated that was, first person oriented, basically fan fiction. But they had no,
Mm.
legal right to do that to his voice. His estate still owns his like likeness and his entity, and this is part of why the actor strike and the writer strike became such a big, like, AI was such a big component of this, because this is the kind of stuff where if you can clone somebody, gonna be the need for them to what's gonna be the need to pay them to
Yeah.
take these roles, do these things in movies and film and, audiobooks and things like that moving forward. So, really, it's knowing what's coming, keeping an eye on what's happening so that you are aware of it, because the first line of defense is
Yeah.
knowing it's happening, and the second line of defense is recognizing that because you are the individual, you can do things like issue cease and desist and go to platforms and have that content removed and taken down and marked as malicious, which bans those creator accounts as well.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really important, just to be aware of what's going on. I mean, in some ways, certainly the celebrity, the actor stuff and the celebrity stuff is a little bit like in the music industry, where it's still a little Wild West, as you described it there, even though it's gone a long way down the track here of um, copies and cover albums and streaming via platforms where you're not actually paying anything um, for listening to that particular piece of creative endeavor, and therefore the artist is not being compensated for
Yeah.
that play, which that's I think something that's still being grappled with, and artists are still
Mhm.
frustrated over, and of course now with AI, that's kind of come over the top of all of that. I think that there's a really interesting example which I love, but I think that I'm seeing from what you've said a real danger in this one. But the example is there's technology around now where um, you can go into a studio for an hour, you get videoed, you read some scripts or you talk about something. I'm not sure how they exactly do it, whether there's standard scripts or whether it's free flow. But anyway, they video you, clone your voice, and then uh, construct a digital avatar of you.
Mhm.
And using that now, that digital avatar, of course, this is a service you pay for, and it's not cheap. So the
Right.
digital, if I were to do that, I would have the digital avatar. So it's not as if somebody else can do that digital avatar, although because it's in the cloud, there's always a risk of it being hacked or accessed. But the beauty of it, if I say had that digital avatar of me, I could then type in a message, and
Mhm.
that digital avatar would then record a video of me speaking that message. And the demos I've seen, you cannot tell the difference. But
I
what's even more powerful
I
is I can then say, do this in Spanish, which I don't speak, or or even more scary, do this in Mandarin, which I don't speak, and access people all around the world in their native language. That to me is incredibly powerful, particularly let's say big corporate executives that might want to put out a weekly or a monthly newsletter to their entire organization. All they kind of write out some of the bullet points. They get their executive assistants to draft up the entire speech because they probably do their speeches anyway, and then this video is recorded and sent out, so it's a lot less work. But I see some real risks in that because it can easily kind of be used to do other stuff.
Well, and I think one of the things that, like, we've touched on briefly is how does that ethically align with the way you wanna
Mm.
run your business? It's one thing for a corporate executive to recognize that it's helpful to localize language and messaging in from especially from an internal standpoint. But if you record a video of you speaking in Mandarin so that you can reach an audience in China, and they buy because they think you
Yeah,
speak
yeah,
Chinese
that's
and you can't deliver, that's actually a problem.
mm,
Like, ethically, that is something you should really be
yeah.
doing
I mean, the
either.
way I would do that is I would say, okay, here's another message from Jurgen's avatar. So I would spell it out that this is, but
Right.
um, and but it still comes across in my voice with my
Mhm.
image and my mannerisms appropriate to what I'm saying. So it's much different to just an AI that speaks that text. Let's say a sort of a just an image and a talking head and a computer generated language saying that, where everybody knows, hey, that's AI, you don't have to say it. But it sort of sounds
Right.
very, very, I don't know, robotic, I suppose, for want of a better term. Whereas this is very human. But I think I would certainly encourage to be ethical about this is to start up here's the AI update of this week if it's a newsletter, or
Right.
here's my description of my services if I'm trying to sell something spoken by my digital avatar.
Right. I think thinking honestly, my rule of thumb with anything like that, especially when you are cloning yourself in any capacity, is, um, be transparent.
Mm.
Be very overly transparent. This is something new. This is something we're trying. This is something that could go
Yeah.
sideways, like, in kind of a big way. Like, in the same way that, like, I tell people be really careful about using things like, um I have a number of authors that I work with who got really excited when Notebook LM came out from Google. And they were like, I can put my whole book in here and it will translate it into another language. And then I can take that transcript and turn it into I can take that translation and turn it into another manuscript and have my book listed in 3 languages on the app, on the Kindle, on the Amazon store. And I'm like, Google's language model, it does not speak like a native speaker. It speaks
Hmm.
like it don't. And they're like, but it's so fast. And I'm like, and if you showed that to a native speaker, they'd be pissed they paid
Yeah.
for it. And then I had to take this a step further and say, I love how excited you are. This is a really awesome, cool thing that is showing all of the different things you can do with AI. And it is really cool. But when you signed up to use it as a part of their terms of service, they scrape all
Yeah.
that data in and if you put your book manuscript in a Notebook LM under the terms of service, your book will be fully scraped, your manuscript will be fully scraped into Gemini and put into the public knowledge base for anybody to access, which means you just negated your copyright on your.
Hmm.
I'm like, please don't, like, please do not do that, because you just totally screwed yourself on copyright because you made your book part of the public domain.
Yeah, I think that's
Under
another really
the public gave your book to Google.
that's another really important consideration that is probably not being highlighted enough these days.